Maniac, man. All right, today's guest is Tevon Fordyce. He owns 20 units in the capital region. So what he currently owns and what is actually pending in his pipeline. So it's a total of 20 units. He's been an investor with us for years. He's a smart guy. Wanted to have him on today so he could talk about a few things that I think are important. One being his numbers and the way he approaches his properties from a risk endpoint. Thanks for coming on, Tevon.
Thanks for having me, man. Thanks for having me.
So,
Appreciate it.
so first, can you do a little origin story? Who you are, where you come from?
Yeah. So my name's Tevon Fordyce. I'm based based out of Long Island, right? In the Long Island area. Pretty much. I'm originally from a country called Guyana in South America, right? So it just borders Venezuela and it's like northeast of Brazil, I believe it is. Just the typical immigrant story. Mainly, we came here, didn't have too much, and when we all came here, it was just like all of us, just like my aunts, my uncles, and my grandparents, all in one house, and just little by little, and like I said, and when we came here, it just so happened to be a very interesting time. It was in the late '80s, early '90s. So, but no, so that's a little bit of that. Currently, I work for a cable company doing doing door-to-door sales, right? So, I don't know if you guys know, but typically I'm one of those guys that will knocking on your door at 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock at night, trying to tell you switch from whoever you got to come over. So that's where I am right now. You know what I mean? So
tough gig.
Yeah, you know what? I mean, it is. I mean, I'll tell you what, it's a job that is, my first boss told me, he goes, listen, when I asked him, what do I need to do to actually be successful in it? And he told me, he's like, Tevon, you got to have rhino skin, right? And I didn't know what that was, but then I understood it. So he said you got to have like thick skin, right? Because it is a job that's like 90% rejection, right? So 90% of the time you have people say no, get lost, right? Or no, get the bleep out of here, right? You know what I mean? And you just got to keep on, keeping on, and but at the same time, though, it's like any other sales job, right? You know what I mean? It's where to the level of difficulty it is, then they tend to reward you, if you can be good at it, all right? You know what I mean?
100%. The guy knocking on doors is making as much as the guy that's running half the company or something, right? So it's
Yeah.
guys making 300 grand a year knocking on doors. So, but it's a skill. So that's what it is. It's a skill. It's mental toughness is what it is. That's what it is. It's the mental toughness. It's knocking on door, no, slam door, no, and then going 100 doors to get the one yes. So,
great. It's good. It's
yeah.
tough.
So that's what led you into real estate investment, right? Wanting to have a safety net besides having to do that job for the rest of your life. That what led you into it?
Well, here's the thing. You know what? Like, so like I've always kind of had like this, like, I don't know, like entrepreneurial edge to me, I guess. You know what I mean? Like, if you ask my family, if you ask my members, they'll tell you, and my friends too, they'll tell you, it's like, my exploits as far as, when I was younger, if I heard that there was a way to make money, right? I'm at least looking into it, right? You know what I mean? So
let me ask you this, because I never did ask you this before, because this was me in school as a kid. I was always bubble gum, all that stuff. Were you that blow pop kid?
No, I wasn't. So what's crazy? It's just like that that aspect of me that was like, if there was a way to make money, I'm there. It kind of developed. It actually kind of developed and came out later on, as I was actually like later on in college, right? But it was just I mean, I laugh right now thinking back, about some of the things I did. I remember one time, I was working uh, it was a summer job, and I was doing a custodian, and we happened to see this guy, and that would come by often, and he was pushing a cart, and he was collecting, like medals, right? So he was telling me this was kind of like the mentality I had about, it's like, yeah, man, like, there's money in metal and stuff like that. And I listened to him pull out the calculator. I was like, really? So what did you? So now what? Like a few days later, you see me going around the neighborhood trying to collect people's scrap metal. You know what I mean? So it was just funny. But yeah, that's kind of
I got you.
kind of me.
So when was the first time you bought your first rental property?
Well, so pretty much my first rental was back in '07, right? I got my first exposure to it. I got my first exposure to real estate per se.
Yeah.
When I was it goes back to when I was in high school, right? You know what I mean? So my high school coach, he would always, on the way home, he would, drop me home, and sometimes, we would stop and grab something to eat, but majority of the time, he would just stop and he would say, and look, I was in like, I think I was in like 11th, 12th grade, and he would like, hey, and he would show me these boarded up houses, and he would point them out to me. He goes, hey, Tevon, you see that? I could buy that house for this price, fix it up, right, and then sell it, right, and it just didn't register me that time. I was just like, all right, that's great, Mr. Mike, cool, and I was like, but that was like the first kind of like, it was just a subliminal seed that was planted, whether he intended to do it or not. And then I was fortunate enough to actually have my uncle. Actually, he was doing real estate, so he was doing buy and hold, he was doing rentals, he was also doing flips, right? And I never got to see the other side of it as far as how he ran his business, as far as the numbers and stuff like that. But what was good about that whole thing was that he actually showed me he actually showed me just from a distance, like that will all actually be seen from a distance, as far as like, hey, this is what's possible, all right? So the story goes, after seeing that, I ran out, got a couple of books, and then I thought I was I thought I was an investor, right? So we got a couple of books, and then shortly after, I got my first property. It was a duplex in Albany, and man, if I only knew. If I only knew, man. If I only knew. So, but you live and learn, right? So
Yeah, you definitely. That's how you learn. You don't learn from success. You learn from failure, for sure, or somebody else's failure, right? I mean, it's the only way, really. I mean,
absolutely.
Somebody else's failure, your failure. That's it. So, how did that work out? So you bought the property, and you bought the property in Albany, and how did that first one work out?
You know what? That first one was like, it was, it was not only was it a lesson, right? It's a big lesson, but look, I got beat up on that first one. You know what I mean? It was, I mean, I made so many mistakes on that first one. Starting off as where like it was my fault. So I was switching agents like it was, it just like it was every other week or whatever, right? So I ended up going with the seller's agent, and then and looking back now, obviously it wasn't the smartest thing to do, right? You know what I mean? So and we end up getting this duplex, and originally when we had seen it, one of the units was occupied with the family, right? The other one was vacant, so we're like, hey, listen, great. You know what? We at least have some money coming in from day one, right? Little did I know, so I made a ton of mistakes, right? I didn't do the original, I meant the pre-closing walkthrough, right? If I would have done that, forget about it, right? I would have caught on a few things, right? I would have found out, what I found out after, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it was
so after that. So did you leave that? You left the closing, went to the property, and is that when you found out nobody lived there? Is that what happened?
Yeah, bro. It was so pretty much we went to the closing. We went to the closing, came after, got a little excited. All right, man. Oh man. Next thing you know, we go, we look, we're like, hey man, nobody's there. Not only was there nobody there, both apartments were just correct, right?
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
it was just, it was like, it was like, you know, you're all happy, this and that, blah, blah, blah. And then you get a punch in the face, boom, reality.
Yeah.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
But do you, because I've been young as well, and I know you think about it differently. Like they like, I'm in big trouble. Like you start grabbing a pencil and paper, and you're like, I'm gonna figure out what this is gonna cost and who's gonna do it, and you start putting actionable steps in place to save your butt. Back then, you're probably like, we'll figure it out. We're all right, and you don't do that, right?
100%, 100%.
Because you haven't got punched in the face enough
No,
yet.
no, man,
Oh,
no.
you don't know. You don't know. You're like, oh, this will be all right. Today, if that happens, you panic,
Yeah,
and that panic actually fixes everything. But you start to figure out how am I going to fix this problem, and when you do those actionable steps, it's a big difference. Big
100%.
difference. But
It
at
was,
that time, you guys just go, we'll figure it out, and then you're slow to react, which makes the bleeding just get worse and worse and worse, right?
yeah, and you know what? And not only that, but it was pretty much like I call it the blind leading the blind, you know,
Yep.
or young and dumb, right? Pretty
Yep.
much.
Yep.
So
Been there.
we didn't know what we didn't know, right? You know,
Yep.
and looking back at it now, you know, my problem started, you know, with that property. It started even before the closing, right? You know what
Yeah.
I mean? If I
From
was,
the first decision of buying it without
yeah,
having all the information.
100%, man. It
Did you do
was
a home inspection? Did you have the
yeah,
home inspection?
yeah. We did a home inspection, and the reason why, and like I said, it was literally, you know, like we did a home inspection, you know, and so we visited the house a few times, you know, and the thing is, in regards to that, I was like, all right, cool, you know what, the stuff is there, right? Like okay, like we at least have one income source coming in, right? You know, and one of the things I learned from that, like, you know, but like I said, it was the blind leading the blind, so my buddy, you know, that we had parted up with on that particular deal, right? He never seen the property, right? You know what I mean?
Okay.
Um, he was pretty much just going on what I had seen, right? You know what I mean? Um,
Yeah.
and so imagine being him, and then walking in.
So his first time seeing it after the closing.
Oh, bro, yeah, after closing, he's probably like, what the heck? You know what I mean? So that yeah. So it was, you know, but
It was a tough
it was
tough
tough.
lesson. Tough
It,
lesson.
it was a tough lesson. It was, you know, we actually, like, you know, besides having to fix them, you know, we didn't have a lot of the stuff in place, right? You know,
Yeah.
so what we were doing, because not only the tenants was it vacant, but the tenants trashed the place, right, that had left, right? And so
Yeah.
we had a mortgage, right, that we had to pay, right?
Yeah.
You know, and we had this rehab that was, you know, for both apartments, right? When we factored in, you know, actually it wasn't we, it was me, right? You know, factored in, okay, only having to do rehab on one of the apartments, right? You know,
Yes.
now you're gonna have to double everything, right? And you didn't factor in, right? You know, I don't factor that in. So you know, between paying the mortgage and then trying to renovate it, and how we were trying to renovate it was we were trying to do it ourselves, right? Going up on the weekend and stuff like that, right? You know, and big, you know, big no. You know, it was just, you know, time, just everything else. So it was I said it was a learning lesson. You know, unfortunately, we were like, you know, we ended up trying to get rid of that house, right? And it wasn't like, and I was just like, hey, let's get rid of this house. Let's sell it for just even what we got, you know, from just what we paid for it. And my buddy was like, hey, you know what? Nah, man, let's sell it for profit. But I had already seen like what was going on in the
Yeah.
market. It
Yeah. Market was tough.
wasn't good. It wasn't good, man. It was a bad, you know. So I had so we decided to listen. Just let's go our separate ways, and that was that. And I left the capital region, you know, just like with the big L, you know, over my head, and it was it's, you know, yeah. So I was just like, golly.
So now you're back, and one of the reasons I wanted to have you on
Yeah.
is because, you know, I mention you a lot when I'm talking to people, as far as I just say, hey, there's a guy that, you know, I started working with, and he's really good with his numbers. He's got everything, you know, from a risk standpoint, he approaches everything the right way. He has his numbers down pat. He has a real good strategy on how he does it, and he's been successful at it. So that's why, you know, and so I use you as an example. So I want to bring you on and say, hey, let's break down the way you do your numbers, because I think it'll help a lot of people. And I have people call me and say, hey, can you help me with my numbers?
Yeah.
I can actually have them watch this, and they'll learn how you do your numbers, which has been successful for you, been real successful for you. So I'm going to grab, just so I can keep track, and if I have any questions, I'm just going to write down so I keep track of what you're saying. So let's start out with, when we say numbers here, you're going to, so let's start out with how you do your numbers, right? So let's start out with how first you buy a property.
Right.
And what are you looking for? Now, the deals you've done are value-added deals.
100%.
For anybody who's watching, the audience, when you do a value-added deal, it's when you buy a property and you add value to the property, just like it sounds. So you buy a property, you normally do some construction work, you normally put new tenants in the property, and normally there's a problem with the owner. They've either got on drugs, divorce, foreclosure. It could be a property they inherited, but these are normally where you would find these value-added deals.
Yeah.
The key to these value-added deals are when you buy them, you first buy them, and then you do the repairs, and you get them running smoothly. At the end, you normally make some money. So not only do you get cash flow, but you also get equity at the end. And this equity is normally within a 3 to 12-month period. So in 3 to 12 months, you have equity where you can actually refinance and pull that money out and scale. It's one way to scale.
100%.
So this is the way that Tevon's approached his deals. So let's look at, all right, so when you go into one of these value-added deals, how do you start approaching it from like a cash-on-cash return?
Yeah. So I mean, when I'm looking at a property, right? There are like, pretty much like two, I don't know, for lack of better terms, like categories, right? You know what I mean? That I like to, look at as far as the numbers, right? And the reason is because it's like, one is because of my previous experience, right? Having to, take an L, right? And just and like knowing how that feels, but at the same time, just learning from that. So one is like, when I look, not just, like, there are a lot of guys, they'll look, they'll just look on either just appreciation, or they'll look on either just the cash flow, right? I try to, I think, look, appreciation is just icing on the cake, right? But my whole thing is it's like, and this is just me, right? I try to think like, what can go wrong, right, first, and then figure it out from there, right? And it obviously affects, and it obviously affects my numbers. So case in point, right? So when I'm looking at, trying to evaluate the numbers for a property, right? Okay, on just the property itself, outside of the, of the cash flow situation, whatever it is, right? There are a few things I'm looking at. One is, right, I'm looking at, especially for these value adds, I'm looking for, on average, right, I'm looking for like anywhere from like an 18, 18 is on the low end, but anywhere from like an 18 to, 18 plus percent cash on cash return, right? Okay.
Yep.
And the variance, it just pretty much depends on, how much work that needs to get done to that deal, in order to actually make it work, right? So that's what I'm looking for on the cash on cash return. Like I said, my goal is to always try to see if they can get 20 plus, right? Okay. Thankfully I've been able to accomplish those, right? But those deals don't always happen like every day, right? So I look for that in the cash on cash return. The other thing I look for, and this is a protection measure, I look for a particular, amount, of equity, right? Okay, from day one, right? Okay, and the reason is, and the reason is because I say, look, one of the things that happened to me the first time was was back in '07. We bought that property, right? Okay, we bought it for what it was worth, right? Okay, and then shortly after, we didn't even see it, right? But shortly after, the market turned, right? And so now when we wanted to sell, right? Okay, we couldn't even really sell for we were having a hard time selling for what we bought it for, right?
Yep. Yep.
So
and just so the market actually turned before that. You just didn't know yet.
They
It
know
was
that.
it was 2006. I mean, I seen it in the beginning of 2007, so it already happened before you closed. You just didn't know yet because you
No,
were just getting it,
100%.
and your realtor didn't know either. A lot of people didn't
Yep.
know, but
Yep.
if you were like deep in it,
You wouldn't.
I was flipping houses, so I knew because all the banks that went away, so I was able to see it earlier. But if you were just an average person, you wouldn't know. Nobody knew.
Wouldn't know. You
Most
wouldn't know.
realtors don't. Most realtors didn't know either because if you were dealing with normal single-family homes,
Yep.
it wasn't any recession yet, but it was there. In certain parts of the country, seen it earlier, like Arizona, so they knew '06. They seen it in '06. We've seen it a little bit later. You know what I mean? And it takes time. I've seen it where whoa.
My battery's low.
Oh, you went right out.
Yeah.
I've seen it where it's like 26, like literally it could take 24 months before everybody really knows it. You know what I mean? Like it could. I mean, what we're going on right now, COVID, we don't know yet. You know what I mean? It takes time. It takes time for
100%.
people to know because, you know, if you're not going to drop your value if you're a seller just because there's COVID-19 out there.
No.
There has to be comparables and other people have to start dropping and prices have to all come down before, you know, you're going to drop your price.
Absolutely. You don't know about it too.
Yeah. 100%. So all right. So we got 18 to 25% is what you're expecting on a cash return.
Yeah.
What are you normally looking to make? You know, a lot of people will say per property or whatever, but I know, you know, a better way to do it is what are you looking to do per door? Or what are you actually seeing per door? And what have you actually been getting per door?
Right. So if you don't, so I'll answer that. If you don't mind, I just want to just finish to answer that one question. That was because the only thing the reason why I'm saying that because I think it's valid, right? So besides that particular cash on cash return, I want to have sort of built-in equity, and the reason is because look, if I buy this property and the market turns today, I at least have some sort of cushion, right? You know, I'm not directly underwater, right? You know, even though my goal is to always for the most part to hold on to all these things for long term, but at the same time, you know, I don't want to buy for what it's worth, right? So with that being said, I look depending on the property, you know, if I could get anywhere from like a 50,000 and upwards, right? Depending on the property, you know, in equity after it's filled up. Right, you know, so those are two measures that I like to make sure that it's put in place, right? In regards to what I'm looking for, you know, after all the expenses and everything else like that, you know, I like to get like my goal is to get $300, you know, per door, right? And what that means is, that after the mortgage expenses are paid off, you know, after reserves are set aside, you know, for maintenance and repairs, reserves are set aside for the big repairs that happen every once in a while, but they're very costly, and setting aside reserves for vacancies and, you know, property management like that. I want to be net in pocket, you know, $300, you know, per apartment, right?
Yeah.
So that's what
because you could do those numbers and you could say I want $300 a door, but the next questions I ask are actually going to make sure that's a real net number. Because if you do the other numbers wrong, that 300 you might even think you're getting 300 and you're actually losing 100 a door.
Yes.
If you do it, because if you do your numbers wrong, you could, and I think that's really important for people to understand. You could do your numbers and you think you're getting 300 and you're actually losing 100 at a door at the end of a year because you didn't do your numbers the right way. That's 100%. Important for people to know because most people, and me and you have talked about this in the past, with your first property, you were looking at what most people do, right? Which is they don't have a maintenance budget. They just have tax, they have principal, interest, tax, and insurance. That's all they have. So if that's all you have, you're missing a lot of factors. What happens when something goes vacant? That's all factors, right? So that's why I want to talk about those factors. So, all right, so we know where you want to be per door. Now, what do you put aside per door for maintenance?
So what I do is pretty much, and it also too depends on the building, how much repairs was actually needed for the particular apartment. But I like to kind of like a sweet spot, you know, kind of like a sweet spot is on average, I like to set aside, you know, any anywhere from like $150, but more like 200, to like 200. Okay. You know, 200 for maintenance and repairs, right? Now, everyone says, there's like, so a lot of times people lump everything together, right? But I don't think you should lump it together, right? There's a category for maintenance and repairs, and then there's a category for the big repairs, right? Which is called capital expenditures, right? Or CapEx. I mean, so I set aside, roughly about $200 a month, around $200 a month, for my regular maintenance and repairs, right? You know what I mean?
We're talking $200 a month per door.
No. You're talking
about the whole building.
For my whole building, because now here's why. When I started out, I had used more elevated numbers, but then pretty much what happened was I was able to actually track. I was able to track and see, hey, you know what are we really spending, right? And I think that's the big difference, right? And it came out just like case in point. When I first started out, my goal per door was actually like, as crazy as it sounds, it was like $267, right, dollars per door. And then I was able to see, oh shucks, on my very first deal, I was actually getting like $350 a door, right? And my maintenance wasn't as crazy. Now granted, a lot of the times, and I think why I've been able to get away with that as we're talking about it now is because, these are value add deals. So when we're going in, right, we're doing, we're actually not just doing a regular rehab, but we also have to change stuff out, right? So I think that helps as far as keeping the overall cost down, right? If it was a patch, if it was a patch and paint rehab, then probably, my monthly costs as far as the maintenance and repairs, would actually be more elevated, but I think that's been able to help us keep it down. So that's been working for me as far as like just having, about setting aside $200, for just, hey, can you go over there and fix this? Or, hey, can you go, I have a leak. Can you go over there and turn that leak off or whatever it is? You know what I mean?
So that $200 is basically, we're saying basically $50 a door. Because you renovate, it's $50 a door.
Yeah.
But that's just like routine and emergency type of maintenance, like the stuff that comes up on a monthly basis. I got to shovel some snow. I got a little leak, an outlet, a breaker broke, whatever that is, right?
100%.
That's what that is. So because I think $50 a door could work. It depends on the property, right? Because we got to realize that, and we didn't say where your properties are. Right now, your properties are in Troy, New York. And that's where you've been buying properties. You also have a property that's pending in Schenectady, New York, and you got a couple more in Troy. So most of your properties are in Troy.
Right.
With the properties in Troy, you renovated them. So and as you go on, you might be more approaching $100 a door. Like things could happen.
Oh, they could.
So I would say, I just don't want I want people to realize it could. I would say safely. $50 to $100 a door for routine and emergency stuff. You're probably gonna have money left over at the end of the year, but I would say $50 to $100 a door is a safe number. And like we're saying, routine and emergency stuff. Now you may have money left over to buy that hot water tank at the end of the year if you can keep the numbers down. But you're better off to have the number and then have leftover money at the end of the year to do some of the CapEx stuff. So so if you have $50 a door, what do you have on the CapEx?
I run it about the same, right?
Okay.
I run it about the same with the CapEx, right? And so in that case, like case in point, right? When that hot water tank, goes, right? That comes out of the CapEx, right? So it doesn't come out of the regular maintenance and repairs, reserves.
So then you're more like $100 a door then when it's all done.
Yeah, exactly.
And that makes sense. That makes sense to me. The 50 sounds a little light. The 100 a door sounds high. It's probably high at the end of the day. If you run your properties right and you've done the renovation right, it's probably high. But I would always budget that because because most people budget zero and then they got a problem. I mean, people are like, oh, I'm not going to have maintenance. And it's just these buildings in Troy, New York, Schenectady, New York, Albany, New York, Buffalo, New York, anywhere upstate New York, they're 100 years old. So, The two things that will hurt you with these properties, people ask me, like, what's going to hurt you? Number one, taxes are high.
Yeah.
Number two,
Alan.
buildings are old.
Yeah.
And number three, you got some of the toughest New York State, some of the toughest laws in the country for landlord tenants. So those are the three things that make it tough to be an investor in New York State. But people like yourself are making money. And when other people can't figure it out, there's always, like, that's a great thing for an entrepreneur. When there's a problem and you can fix it, you can fix that problem. Like, so everybody sees a problem and you see a solution. I can fix this solution.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? So, all right, so let's just start. Let's go into some of the other numbers real quick. Some of the other numbers that you calculate so that you can get down to the $300 profit, from the top gross number to the bottom number. What is another number that you use? So vacancy. Let's do that.
So pretty much, we've been pretty fortunate to to have like low vacancy and not have a lot of evictions. But I as like this is one of the times I would use like a rule of thumb, right?
Yeah.
A rule of thumb is that I try to use like about 5% for vacancy, right? That's and so whatever 5% of the gross rent gets set aside for for a vacancy, and that's just what we do,
And you've been actually able to make money because you haven't had to use that 5%. So that actually at the end of the year, it's either in your pocket or it's in an account, however you do it, but it's available is the bottom line.
Yeah.
You've had a good luck in it, so that's good.
100%. Yeah.
Any other numbers that you calculate?
So I mean, so we have vacancy, we have capex, we have maintenance and repairs. Obviously, I factor in, my PM costs, or property management costs, right in there too. And that's, and then besides that, look, I mean, obviously you got to factor in, water and sewer, right? Trash and just the regular.
The hard cost of whatever the hard cost.
You know what I mean? So those, those, and I just think it's a good term, right? Those are those hard costs, right? There's just, you can't go up or down with them. It's just that.
They are what they are.
What they are.
King charges you. So if King is going to charge it, you're going to pay no matter what. So nothing you can do on that.
So and pretty much like that dictates, that dictates, how we get to that bottom line, right? So those are the numbers that I use, right? As far as, that affects them, the monthly cash flow, what I would say too, at the same time, and I think we talked about this last time, is that like, outside of because look, right? I was listening to a podcast the other day, it was saying it was a bigger podcast. Someone was saying that like everyone's, you can always focus on the cash flow, right? But cash flow in of itself is good, but at the same time, it could be a little bit deceiving, right? You get what I'm saying? Because look, like if you have a cash flow, if you have good cash flow, but then it's the area is like, right? It's not the greatest, right? So like I say that to say this, besides just cash flow, one of the things, that I try to look at, because, I try to think, hey, listen, if this thing goes south, where am I at? Right. You know what I mean? So, I like to look at my debt ratio, right?
Super important. Super important.
Because I think if the banks look at it, and they're a lot smarter than I am.
Yeah, so sure.
And they factored it. I should probably look at it, right?
Yep.
You know what I mean? Into my deal, and so that's one thing that I just, to be candid with you, I just started to actually look at, and say, hey, where am I on that, right? Just because it just dawned on me, like, oh shucks, if the banks are doing this, maybe it's worth me considering, So,
I think it's important. I think also, looking at how much, your equity, right?
Yeah.
We just had a guest on last week or a couple weeks ago, and he said that, always making sure that your equity, you leave equity in the deal. You don't go to 100%, right? You don't want to max out. I mean, that and cap rates, the two things that will kill you.
Yep.
Like, never even did a deal, never factored a cap rate, don't even care about it, because I believe so strongly in the value add than the cap rate, and this cap rates being super low, right? And they've been historically low. Those people, now we're dealing with COVID, those people are going to run into some problems with those low cap rates. I believe that. And then also, if you somehow you figure out how to max out your equity and take it, that's a problem in itself too. You know what I mean?
It's crazy. Like I was, so I was considering, I had did a refi, a few months ago, and then I was considering looking at it, and I was considering, doing another refi, and there was one bank that I was considering, and they were like, hey, you know what, we could do 80, you could do 80-20 LTV, right? But then the normal guy that I normally use, right? He was like, hey, listen, we can only do 70, 70-30, right? But initially, I was like, oh man, hey, that's, I'm if I can get the extra, the extra 10%, why not? But I was like, hey, you know what, like, I if I go with this guy, if I stay with what I've been doing, right, I at least have 30%, LTV there, right, versus 20%, right, and I'm like, and if I'm not starving for that money, for that extra 10%, you know what, it's just a better overall position to just stay with that 70-30 position, right? If that makes any sense.
And again, it's the bank. The bank, the bank does it for a reason. So, you know what I mean? So because you could get somebody, maybe you could even get an equity partner that comes in, and you give some of that equity up to a partner, maybe a silent partner, and then you cash out. Now you're at 90, or say you had 100. Now you got no equity in the deal. If the market does go down, it's too dangerous.
It's a very dangerous position. That's
very dangerous. Super dangerous.
First deal, right? And that's why I was like, you know what? I'm not going back there again. Knock on wood. I'm not gonna go make that same mistake again. You know what I mean? So
100%. Yeah, that doesn't make sense. You want to, for a lack of a better term, you want to keep some skin in the game and leave the equity there. So if you buy it cheap enough, you renovate it, and then you refinance it, you can still pull out enough and still leave 30%. And it doesn't happen every day, but when it does happen, it's worth all the work you did.
100%, man.
It's life changing. I mean, just in the last few years, the equity that you made a lot of money off just a few properties. And it shows that it can be done if you're patient. That's another reason why I wanted you on, because you've been super, super patient. So if anybody can learn anything from this episode, is learn how you do your numbers and just be patient until you find deals. Because there's so many times that you just waited for 6 months to a year to find one deal, where other people are like, they get competitive with themselves, and they pull the trigger, and then they made a bad investment. So
and you know what, right along those lines, it's like, I was thinking about it today, this morning, and look, I used to wrestle, right? I wrestled in high school and I wrestled in college, and as I got later on, in my career at wrestling, right? So like, when you first start off, right, with the wrestling, right, you just want, especially when you're like, you're good and you got good technique, right? You'll just want to attack, right? But then as I got later on in my career, and even now, just looking back and just seeing how guys wrestle, right? It's like, it's like you can hold position, right? And then when the opening is there, boom, and then you attack, boom, boom, right? So, rather than attack. So I say that to say, in regards to what you just said about the whole thing about being patient, right? There's a difference of doing a transaction, right? And sometimes, look, I can fall into that. I fall into that, right? The difference between, doing a transaction and then getting a deal, right? You know what I mean? Big difference, right? So I just think, it's important to just be like, it's my battery again. Sorry about that. You there? Yeah. It's important just to, like, be selective, right? And just think along, and just kind of think about it as far as the, the big long-term picture, rather than pouring now, right? You know what I mean?
100%. Yeah. There's always going to be deals out there. You just got to wait for the opportunity. When somebody has a deal when somebody has an opportunity for you, and maybe they've hit hard times and they need to sell, or they just have a property they don't want any longer, whatever the reason is.
100%.
That's the kind of deals you've been buying, and that's the kind of stuff that I would recommend.
Yep.
It's the best stuff. Or there's just a deal and it makes sense. Once in a while that happens as well, and it makes sense if the prices come down. But we haven't seen that because we've seen the top. Since we've been working together, we've seen the high market.
Yeah.
It's a seller's market.
Crazy.
The highest prices that we've ever seen in 20 years.
Yep.
Since I've been doing this. So all right. So the next thing I wanted to ask you was so basically, when you started out saying you're door-to-door salesman, still currently door-to-door salesman. Well, you were before COVID-19, but hopefully soon you'll be able to go back to door-to-door salesman. So that's what you do. But I know when I first met you, the goal was to become financially independent, where you didn't need to be a door-to-door. You could still do it. Great. You make good money. But if you choose not to, you don't have to, because you have enough money from rental properties to at least pay your bills and take care of your family. And I think you're close to being there. So I guess the question is, when will you reach that goal? When will you go from door-to-door salesman to financially independent?
So you know what it is, like my thing is that and I've thought about this long and for a while. So my thing is, when I first started, all I wanted to do, so we have with my job, we have a salary and then we have commission, right? And at that time when we first started, we were working with a different company. I was working for a different company, and the salary was the same, But so all I wanted to do was just to cover my salary, which wasn't a lot, which was just like $40,000, right? And, that way, am I thinking if anything ever happened, right? I at least have like a $40,000 head start, right? You know what I mean? And that's what that was, right? Because because what we didn't say, because prior to knocking on doors, right? I was working as a security guard, right? I was making less than $30,000 a year, and so so I was very fortunate, because like when the opportunity came, to actually knock on doors, right? Man, I attacked that thing like it was serious, right? I was working on Saturdays, which I had to do. I was working on Sundays on my days off, because I was like, yo, and so that was that in regards to that. But having come from that, and at the same time, even though it's a tough job, right? I actually like it, right? I actually like the challenge of
challenge, right? Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Challenge.
But so regardless, I think personally, like regardless wherever I land up, right? It's all it is for me is just like doing the job, right? Well, doing it because I want to versus doing it because right? And so I mean, I could have like, I don't know, I could have like 100, like 60 or 100 units, and for me, it's just like, listen, I'm all about options, right? Because I don't want to be put in the corner, right? To where, because look, I got friends that do the same job that I do, and they make really good money, just really good money, right? But it's like the carrot. It's like it's like the rabbit and the carrot. They just dangle the carrot. I got a buddy. That it's shocking, right? I mean, he told me one time years ago. He goes, "Listen, Tevon, I have to make 15 grand a month, or else I can't pay my bills." And I'm like, "What?" Yeah. I'm like, what? I'm just like, what's wrong?
That messes with your mind, because the risk of that is so scary to you, because you worry about the risk so much that scares you. It's a risk. And when you call it options, I call it freedom. You want freedom. That's freedom. That's why I call it financial freedom, right? Yep. Freedom, right? It's freedom. 100%. It's being self-employed. It's being freedom. I mean, you work for a company, but you don't have to report into an office if you hit certain goals, and that's freedom. That is worth more than the money in some cases. You don't have to go into an office and sit there all the time. Just go do your work. Nobody's checking on you. So it's freedom. You know, if you could call it options, you call it freedom, but I think that's the number one, that's the number one thing, freedom.
It is, you know, and like I said, you know, I mean, that's the biggest aim, because, you know, the money's the money, right? You know what I mean? So, you know, it's just like, you know, but what you get with the money, right? You know, I mean, i.e., the freedom, all the options, right? You know, look, the time, right? And you can never get that time back, right? You know what I mean? So I just think that's a big thing for me, as far as, and that's kind of where I'm, pushing, like I think this was the original question, was that like, so I have so me personally, I have this goal where it's like a tier, it's like the levels of goals, right? So the first level is to get to 20, right? Is to get to 20 units, and get them stabilized, pay some of that debt off, not all of it, but get to a certain, but believe it or not, like I was telling my cousin the other day, right? I actually, once I get to 20, I kind of want to flip the LTV, right? I would like to go to where, where my equity position is like a 60%, right? 60 to 30, right? And I have my reasons for that. And then once I can do that, then I scale up again, to, let's just say, God willing, to another 20, right? So that's how I plan on attacking it. But
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was just gonna say these 20 that you have.
Yeah.
You own some of them, some are in the pipeline, and we'll be closing soon.
Yeah.
Once these are all closed and renovated, probably let's say like January, or not January, let's say December of this year, you should be closed, rehabbed, and rented by that point. Definitely, probably earlier, but let's just say that, right?
Yep.
At that point, you've exceeded the goal you originally had, right? As far as financial.
Yeah.
You could not work and still pay your bills.
Yeah.
If you decide you were going to take a year off.
Yeah.
And you're home now. You don't. It's not what it's cracked out to be, right? Nobody wants it. I see this thing on Facebook where this guy goes outside. It's like this old Italian guy. And he goes outside. He drops a bowl. See that? He breaks it. Then he goes in the house and gets a cup and goes out and breaks it and and then he sweeps them up and cleans them. And he does it again. So it's like, everybody wants to retire, and now everybody's in their house. Like, retirement's not so great after all. What are you gonna do?
Yeah.
So I think you want to get back to work, but again, freedom. You have the freedom to make the decision. If you got sick,
God forbid,
you got sick and you were like, you know what, I'm sick. We're managing the property for you, and so we're putting the money in your bank account every month.
Yep.
And you could literally do that, not now, but a year from now, that would be a reality. That would be a reality for you, which is huge. I mean, that's huge, and that's what I've been saying to people recently. Having a business that gives you a predictable money every month, even if you get sick, or having rental properties, either a business, something that kicks out cash flow monthly,
or get fired, or even not good, but bet against, like, even if let's just say if your job turns, let's just say if your job shuts down, like I was talking to a buddy the other day, and the company that I used, so the cable industry that I work, the telecom industry, dude, it's going to like changes, man. You know what I mean? And like I know companies that are shutting down that whole department, right? That we working, right? Not necessarily the company that I work for, but competitors, right? And so I'm like, wait a minute. I say to myself, like, wow, if this company did it and they are like the largest cable company in the country, right? I'm not saying that my company might do it, but who's to say they won't downsize, right? You know what I mean? So which, it's better than sickness, but it still sucks. But at the same time, it's like you get, at least you'll be able to have, options. Like I told a lot of my friends that I work with, guys that are, fortunate to make big money, but they're like, I'm like, yo, dude, you guys should be doing something with your money, right? Besides this, right? Because this could go away and not, they like, hey, listen, it's never, they kind of like, a good time.
Salespeople, that's hard for salespeople. Salespeople, doctors are the worst I've heard this, actually Dave Ramsey would always say, doctors are the worst at saving money because they know it's coming. They believe it's always going to come. They don't know, they believe, because it's not, nobody knows, but they believe, right?
Yep.
And salespeople are the same way, because if you're a doctor, you're getting high income. There's a lot of physician loans that they have that 100% financing. They have as loans. Those loans exist for mortgages. 100% financing to buy a house. I don't know today it doesn't exist, but pre-COVID it did exist, right? And the reason they do that is because the bank knows the doctor's going to make money. The doctor knows the doctor's going to make money, so it works. Same thing goes with salespeople in the regard that they know they're going to make money, and they're going to do another deal. You know what I mean? I know I can do another deal. And that's what they think. So they get caught up in this hamster wheel, and it becomes a problem. Yeah. And so that's what you're saying, and I agree 100%. You got to put the money somewhere while you're making it, because you don't know. God forbid you get sick. Right now we're going through all this stuff. I think hopefully people realize now through COVID that if Spectrum is doing great before COVID, who knows what happens when they come out.
100%.
It's everybody's going to be hit a little hard right now. Everybody's going to taste a little blood right now.
They are.
So I think the people who have the predictable cash flow are going to be all right. Like if you have, you're going to be all right. You have the cash flow. You were thinking smart before this, so it's going to help you go through it. If you weren't thinking smart before this, it might be a little tough for a while.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's what it is. I mean, look, like we talked about, a while ago. It's just like the whole thing is just, just think, worse, what can happen, what's the worst thing that can happen? I thought about that not just with real estate, but with my job, right?
100%. 100%.
And I was just like, and I've seen it. So we're making XYZ commission, and then he gets cut, and and so I was like, you know what, it is what it is. I'm gonna keep on trucking away, but at the same time, just trying to build this and then do that, right?
It makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
So let's end with this. So so you've been doing this now. You started out in 2007. You came back in 2016. You get back into it. So now you've been in it for 4 years. Just about to be 4 years, and you got your cash flow by the end of. So let's say 4 years and 4 months. 4 years and 4 months. At that point, you'll probably close to double your cash flow goal. And that's your monthly cash flow, and then your equity stake is hundreds of thousands of dollars, literally hundreds of thousands of dollars in savings and equity put away for whatever you end up doing with it in the future, right? So that's what the success you had. What have you learned that you can tell somebody else that's just starting out?
Yeah, man. I mean, look, there was the one thing, a couple of things. One, I'll tell somebody that started out, and people ask me every now and then, and and when they do, I kind of always have this thing, like, I tell them, first of all, I only know what I know, right? I don't know it all, right? I only know like that amount, based on my experience and just stuff that I've seen and I've read and such forth. So I'll only tell you, So my thing is this, like, one, I think it's good to just get educated, right? You know what I mean? There's like when I started years ago, and even starting back in 16, just buying certain books and just reading, right? So I read one book, bro. I remember this years ago. He says, listen, 20 years from now, you're going to be who you are, with the exception, that there's two things that are going to, influence that. One is the books that you read and the friends that you keep, right? And it's so true to that, right? So I read one book, which when I read it, it was like, oh shucks, this is what I didn't understand back in 2007, right? You know what I mean? And then it helped gave me a framework on how to be able to run the numbers, right? So now when I'm talking to Brock, right, I at least have some sort of framework as far as the numbers. I'm not coming to him with like a blank slate and say, hey, listen, can you tell me how to do it, right? I have some sort of, some sort of framework, and then I can, ask them specific questions. Hey, what about this, or what about that? So I just think it's important to actually, put in the time, right?
Yeah.
Get yourself educated, try to read books and stuff like that, either podcasts. There's so much stuff out there.
So much. So much.
Exactly. You know what I mean? And it's a lot different now than back then. It's because
So
that's, so I would say that. The other thing, I would just say is just like it is making sure, that you find good people, right? And that's like in two phases. The first part of it is just like having, actually having people that actually know more than you, right? That could tell you, hey, listen, you're wrong, man. You know what I mean? And I just think it's really empowering and it's powerful at the same time to be able to say, hey, to be able to, because look, there's been times in the past, a lot of them, right? Where I'm like, yo, dude, this is a great deal, man. This is a great deal, Brock. And then you say to me, garbage. I'm like, what? I'm like, oh. I'm like, come on, bro. I'm like, listen, don't you see? I'm like, and look, once again, I was looking at the cash flow, right? There were other things, right, beyond the cash flow that I didn't see, right? You know what I mean? And then because you with your experience, because you've been there, done that, and I couldn't see it, but you would tell me, listen, garbage, next, and I'm like, what? You know what I mean? And it's great because, like, one, I'm a very ambitious person, but being able to have people around you that could protect you from your own ambition, right? You know what I mean? Because ambition is good, but it can be deadly at the same time, right? You know what I mean?
100%.
So just having people that actually know more than you, and that can say, dude, you're right on with this, or you're off the mark. And then also too, and I think lastly, just having like a good team, right? A friend of mine years ago, she said, listen, Tevon, it doesn't matter how good the deal is, right? If you don't have a supporting staff, like a team, to be able to help you to manage that thing, right? It don't matter if it's making you XYZ dollars, it's no good, right? Because you won't be able to extract what on paper, because you don't have the supporting staff, right? So I think those are like, three things that I would tell people. It's just like, take the time to actually build relationships, right? With people that are actually smarter than you, even if they give you a lot of their time, or even if they give you a little bit of the time, just take time to actually build those relationships with those people, take the time to actually try to build like a, solid, group of people around you, and get yourself educated, you know what I mean?
So yeah, and so that team would be a realtor.
Mm-hmm.
In your case, it would be a loan officer, a good loan officer that you trust, right? It would be a realtor that you trust. It'd be a management company you trust, and it would be an attorney you trust, and it would also be who did I miss? A contractor, right? Contractors that you trust. If you have that team around you, and I just want to spell that out for people because if somebody's just starting out, they may not know who that whole team is, and I want to make sure we let them know who that team is. So that's important. So yeah. So put your camera sideways. Can you put it sideways?
Yeah,
that way. Yeah, that way. So all right. So yeah. So that was the last thing I wanted to say. I just want to make sure that we put that point in so people know that what that team actually is that you're talking about. Because in your case, we help with some of that, and other people help with some of that. So I want to make sure that people know who to hire, who to track. Make sure they go out and look, check references, check out who these people are, and really, and it's going to be a trial and error. You're going to hire some you like, and you're going to hire some you don't like, and some might work good for a year, and then after a year they don't work. You've seen that. You've seen that as well. You've had people that have been really good for 36 months, and then they don't work out right. So, and then you gotta replace them.
You do. And you do. I mean, look, the thing is about the team too. Is just like that. I think is huge. Like on when you're trying to manage rentals, right? Like case in point, right? Brock, you always tell me, hey, you know what? Look, like a lot of people are getting burned, right? And you would say this, like, hey, Tevon, a lot of people are getting burned on the rents, right? Because they can get whatever rents they want, right? but it's another thing to get those people to pay, right? And just once again, just this works for me, or this is how at least I see it, right? I'm seeing, okay, you know what? All right, yeah, Joe is getting, I don't know, $100 more, whatever it is, right? But Joe might be in and out of eviction court, right? And so, and so be able to have somebody say, hey, you know what? Listen, I think, I think if you could, if you're still making money with this, right? Having the right people there, like as far as your people that are qualified, that's huge, right? So that goes back to the whole thing about having a team, about having somebody that that could say, hey, regardless of whatever you think is right, this is actually what's going to be like. This has actually been proven to actually work. Long story short.
Yeah, 100%. And you're 100% right. You can get anybody to agree to anything. So
Right.
if you want 1,800 for a $900 rental, you'll get
Yep.
somebody to agree to it because they'll sign all the papers, but they're
Yep.
never going to pay you. They
They
know
never.
they're not going to pay you, so they agree to whatever. So
Yep.
people say I'm getting 1,200 or 1,500 for rents. I'm like, yeah, but it's not sustainable. The tenant's not going to keep paying you. Whoever agreed to that is nobody else wants to rent to that person, so you're renting to that person. They're agreeing to you, and you're agreeing to them. And that's the first time I've ever said that, but that's exactly what it is. You're agreeing to them, and they're agreeing to you. Nobody else wants to rent to them. They're going to pay. They'll say, yeah. In their mind, they may think they're going to pay you, but ultimately they never do pay you. So you get the tenant that comes in. We got one yesterday. Comes in, is like, what about that? What about this? Came with a laundry list of stuff they want before they move in. That's a good tenant because they're going to pay. Sometimes when the people come in, they're giving you a little hard time. They're giving you a hard time because they know they're going to actually be giving you their hard-earned money. And some of these people are giving you 40 to 50% of their income. So you got to treat it. You got to think about that. If somebody's giving you that much of their income, they're like, hey, I want that painted. I want this. And sometimes it doesn't make sense, and other times it does make sense. But when the person gives you a hard time when they're moving in, they're like, hey, I want this done. I want that done. It indicates to me that they're probably going to pay you, because the person just agrees to everything. A lot of times it's not qualified. Now, obviously, that's just an opinion. I'm just feeling it. That's not concrete. Concrete is pulling the credit. Concrete is doing all the due diligence. Then you really know. Like there's certain metrics that you have to check. You check those metrics out and you check those boxes. You're not always going to be right, but you're going to get to that 99% where you're right. If you know the metrics to check for, which is the job, the credit, and not credit in every property, because different properties you don't have to check credit as much, but just checking the background, knowing that the two things that we always look for is when does somebody, have they been going to work, or have they been taking care of their landlord, and have they been going to work? If those two things are checked, you're probably all right. If you can see this adult has always been going to work with not lots of gaps in employment, you're going to be all right. So that's literally the one thing we check for, because if you go to the eviction court and you go there and you say, hey, let's see why, like what's the common denominator on these 50 people? What you're going to find is there's gaps in employment. It's not that somebody doesn't want to pay you. It's that there's a gap in their employment, and when that gap hits, they can't pay. So it wasn't that they don't want to pay you. It was they didn't want to get out of bed. They lost their job.
Right.
And then it's a snowball effect. You know what I mean? It's not like when I was a kid, you always hear deadbeats. People say it's a deadbeat. It's not that. It's not that somebody doesn't want to pay you. As soon as they get money, they'll give it right to you. It's that they don't have the money because choices. So that's what we do is look at those metrics, and then ultimately, if you look at those metrics, you're not going to be 100% right. Because something's going to happen, but you'll be 99% right. If you're 99% right, you're gonna be all right. And that's why, that's why you haven't had any evictions, is because of that system, right? I mean, it works. And your properties, we didn't say, but your properties are B and C properties. Yeah. And those are the properties that are the best to do added value deals. The C's are a little rougher, and it's just sometimes where things get a little bit behind, but they catch up and you get your money. But ultimately, at 4 years, you haven't had to evict a tenant. So, it knows what I just said about qualified tenants.
Don't jinx me now.
It'll happen. It's inevitable. But you've been fortunate, and it works. Like the metrics work. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Sports, bottom line. So, look, Tevon, I appreciate you coming on. Appreciate you
Absolutely.
sharing with people. I know it's going to help people. I know the numbers, the way you do the numbers is definitely going to help somebody. You just taught people for sure how to break down their numbers.
Yeah.
And everybody does their numbers differently. Maybe they have different goals. They
Yeah.
don't need to do them exactly like you, but at least
Not.
they have your understanding of how you do them. Because I never tell anybody, like I've never told you one time, we never even talked about how you do your numbers. This is
Right.
like literally the first time we've ever broken them down because you do them the way you do them, somebody else does them the way they do them. But it's important for people starting out to really not make the mistake that you made and I made, which
Yeah.
is not having enough maintenance. It's really the maintenance I see is one of the
Kills
biggest
you.
things.
It kills the maintenance the maintenance is one of the things that actually kill you, man. You know what I mean? And it's just like if you could nail that down, you know what I mean? And if you could decrease that, right? Just it makes a big difference, right? We were looking at our we had gotten an expense statement, from the main contractor that we use for the maintenance and repair. And between the two buildings, and this was for 19,
Yeah.
and between, it's crazy because between the two buildings, right, we pretty much fall in line, right? It just falls in line, with the original projection, right?
Yeah.
And then what I didn't say earlier, but is that like once you're tracking it, right? Once you're tracking it, and then you see and then you see, okay, look, and there's spikes going up here, right? Then you adjust it up, right? You know what I mean? So
Yeah, 100%. You can
you know,
adjust or you can make different
yep,
decisions. You can see
yep,
why this is happening.
absolutely.
And, it makes perfect sense. So appreciate you coming on, Tevon.
Brother,
And thanks. I really appreciate it. Thanks, man.
no problem. Thank you, bro.